We aligned on a goal and implemented new messaging, new positioning, and of course, new assets. And we blew our goal out of the water. We had like a 12-month goal and we hit that in like 6 months.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Insurance Growth Lab. I'm Callan Harrington, and today I'm joined by Amber Wuollet. Amber is the Director of Product and Lifecycle Marketing at Cowbell, and she is an insurance vet.
I was able to work on a lot of like product and marketing focused projects, like launching new discounts, launching new rating structures. I helped launch our high value underwriting and our wildfire underwriting program, which completely shaped my view on marketing and shapes how I talk about insurance now in marketing and in product marketing, and how I look at launches and positioning and messaging.
Now, for our deep dive, we got into the weeds on product positioning. Positioning is one of those topics that doesn't get all the headlines, but can absolutely be the difference between a product succeeding or a product failing. Amber walked us through an example of an insurance product that was underperforming and how she used positioning to get that product back on track. And I could not have scripted a better example of positioning if I wanted to. She broke down where she started, her process for repositioning the product, and most importantly, she gave the results. And my favorite part of the results, product sales went up without having to overhaul the product itself.
We completely reworked the positioning and the messaging. We backed off of the newness. We backed off of the complexity. We backed off of the acronym we were using for it. And it's like, hey, this is protection for high verdicts. Let's call it verdict protection when we talk about it. Let's simplify it so that it's easier for brokers to sell. So it's easier for policyholders to buy.
So with that, let's jump in and hear how she did it. So, Amber, welcome to the show. For those that don't know you in the industry, which I don't think that there's a lot of people, Amber is the Director of Product and Lifecycle Marketing at Cowbell, and I've had the good fortune to work directly with Amber in the past. Amber, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat. It's been a while.
So, okay, here's where I want to start. This is going to be an abrasive first question. Tell me about the biggest fail of your career.
First of all, I love the transparency and just diving right in. I'm really excited to relive my trauma with your audience.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we do here. That's what we do on the show. But
I have a fail so epic, it still haunts my nightmares. So let's dive into it. So I'll set the scene. Late stage startup, looking for that big or go home moment. So we decided to go as big as one can possibly go and do an airport installation so large that you could practically see it from space. So we're taking over this hallway. And this also is in a prime spot where some really high target clients routinely fly in and out of. So we're taking over not just this huge hallway, but spots throughout the airport. And when I mean hallway, it's not like a little hallway. It's like 15 feet wide, like 20 feet tall, like 60 feet long. You have to go through it to get to all the main gates. So we build this entire campaign, this entire new brand image around this. So we create this universe that everyone has to walk through. We've got installation at the beginning of the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel, sprinkled complimentary messaging throughout the entire airport. We are so excited. We had never gone this big before. This was our moment. We had local press excited. We had industry publications excited. I had set up with a few local news stations to do like a press conference live. And the timing was perfect because it was right before the big conference season. So we're going to launch this. Mm-hmm. We've been teasing this out. And then we're going to have this big news launch. And then everyone's going to be able to experience this live as conference season rolls out. And we found the perfect date to launch it, which was March 11th, 2020. AKA the day that COVID shut down the whole world, essentially. And it's just one of those things, the day started out so normal. Like we had heard about this coronavirus thing. It was like on our radar, but we had no idea what was about to happen. So there was a big crew of us that like all flew out to the airport, and we were filming, and I was waiting for the newscaster, the news station that I was supposed to interview with we've been, texting throughout the day to figure out the time. We wrapped all of the stuff that we needed to shoot there. And I'll never forget, I was sitting there like waiting for the confirmation of when I'm going to go on the news. By the way, I'm watching some of the news, getting a little concerned. But I'm so focused on this huge, very big, very expensive initiative that I'm in the middle of. And I'll never forget the news station calls me and tells me, yeah, we will not be covering your airport installation. The only thing we will be talking about today is the coronavirus. And also, by the way, if I were you, I would get home, go back to wherever you came from as soon as possible. Like hop on the next flight. And they're like, you don't understand what's about to go down. You need to get home. So at that point, it really sunk in that 6 to 9 months of planning is really kind of circling the drain here. And then also the future of like event marketing and the shutdown. So I did take her advice. I got on the next plane home and just kind of tried to figure out what was next. And then like everyone else in March 2020, we kind of went into survival mode. What do we do now?
Yeah.
What does our event strategy look like now? What does our content strategy look like now? So of course, we pivoted as much as we could. We used the content that we had filmed on site. We shared that. We kept going with our campaign, but we made like a multi-touch kind of direct mail focus. And we pivoted to virtual events. We created a interview series via video. So we did the best we could with it. And interestingly enough, I read a Seth Godin blog yesterday that really hit home sort of the moral of the story. And the message on Seth's blog was, don't judge your decisions always by the outcome, because sometimes good decisions have bad outcomes. A bad decision is a decision that is made without the correct context in mind. And in Q2, Q3 2019, we made decisions based on the information available at the time. So I've always struggled with this. Like, what's the main takeaway? Like, how do I never do this again? But the reality is that you can't always control the entire environment. In fact, that's almost always the case, is there's going to be variables outside of your control. So I do stand by the creative direction. I stand by the work that the teams did. And yeah, it really sucks that it did not pan out. We renegotiated the contracts and we made what we could of it. But sometimes good decisions lead to bad outcomes.
And of course we had worked together for that. So I remember all of this. It wasn't like we just said, hey, we've never done any kind of airport marketing at all. Like we had tested this. And that was a, not, I don't want to use the word, but that was a bold move in its own right when we first started doing that. And it's like there was highly strategic, like you said, in that, a lot of our strategy hinged on getting some of these carriers that were in that area. And I don't want to say a lot of our strategy. We were fine if we didn't get them, but if we got them, it was going to be a huge catalyst. And nobody was thinking outside the box like that. And of course, like half the company was like, okay, this is this is a pretty out there move, but I was like, yeah, that's really interesting. Nobody else is doing that. It's going to get attention. So
for real, I mean, it was like account-based marketing on steroids, right? Like
unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that I use that story all the time. And then of course it's got the best punchline ever.
Man, just brutal. But yeah, I mean, the strategy was solid. The creative was amazing. The team was, I mean, everything was amazing except the date that it launched. So,
which, like you said, there's no world where you can time that. Impossible.
yep.
Absolutely 100% impossible to time. So I'm so happy you shared that story because it's one of my favorites. So I want to talk about a little bit into your career before we dive into the details of a campaign. And where I'd love to start is one of the ones which as I understand it, was probably one of the most pivotal places at the beginning of your career. Talking about a company that's got thousands of employees. How did you get the job at American? It just, for those that are not in the Midwest, this is American, and it's a hotel chain in the Midwest owned by Wyndham.
I don't think I have ever told this story on a podcast before. We are really going into the vaults for this one. I love it.
I am so excited to hear this.
But also very, pre-internet, in that literally I was that person who was counting the days until I could turn 14 because I wanted to work. Like, I wanted a job. I wanted to be a businesswoman. Or whatever that can look like at age 14. And I grew up in like a touristy town. So we had a lot of hotels. We had like an amusement park. And some of them would hire at 14. So I'm like, you know what? The week before I turn 14, I'm going to go down the list and just start calling places and see who will talk to me before. So that way the day I turn 14, I can start a job. And literally the first hotel in the yellow pages was American. So I called them and said, I'm looking for a job. I'm really hardworking. I'm a good student. I've got extracurriculars. So I've got references. What do you need? Can I come down and get an application? And they were a little taken aback. Like, excuse me, kid, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 13. Running to me 14 in 6 days. But yeah, I went down, picked up an application, and set up an interview for like my 14th birthday, and got the job. And the rest is history.
Well, I actually did. So I did some digging to find that one. And I was most blown away with, and this kind of just gets into it. I could see as being kind of a theme of your career as a whole. You had a heck of a lot of ambition to do that at 14, which is crazy. One, I didn't even know that you could do that at 14. My first job was 15 at McDonald's, and I could tell you I did not have that type of ambition. I think it's the only job I got fired from. Okay, now let's jump to American Family Insurance. So you spent 10 years as in real, what I'll call real insurance, right? Which to me is like claim side, underwriting side. You were in the underwriting department. So a couple questions on that. How much did that impact you down the road as you got onto the marketing side, being rooted in that underwriting side? And then how much was that just spending that time at a big carrier, American Family Insurance, had an impact on your career as a whole?
Oh, so much. I am so incredibly grateful that I landed where I landed for my first insurance role. Because it was somewhat by accident. My sister, who's now in legal, had an internship at American Family. So after college, I spent a few years kind of just traveling, working abroad, came back, wanted a real job. And my sister suggested American Family. I saw there was an opening in the newspaper, Star Tribune, local Twin Cities newspaper. And went for it. And I was really able to get in at the point where you see everything. And I think that's the cool thing about underwriting is you work with the entire ecosystem. You know, I was talking to agents, I was talking to insureds and claims. And then I was able to work on a lot of like product and marketing focused projects, like launching new discounts, launching new rating structures. I helped launch our high value underwriting and our wildfire underwriting program. So got to work and see so much of the insurance value system, which completely shaped my view on marketing and shapes how I talk about insurance now in marketing and in product marketing, and how I look at launches and positioning and messaging. And I think that is something that adds so much more fun to it, because I get so excited about like new policies, new rating programs. I'm genuinely so passionate about it. It's not like insurance is like a stopover for me. I've been here for almost 20 years now. So it really has influence. And I was so fortunate to have amazing mentors so that were really explaining like what this coverage means and what happens if we do this. And at that point, it was like the old school green screen, like the mainframes. So I was like looking at application information, this was home, auto, like umbrella, that kind of thing. So just really learning end to end and seeing so much of insurance and just a really deep dive into coverage, claims, new business, reporting, the data and analytics part. So just so grateful for that element that has continued to influence me so strongly everywhere I've gone since.
Do you find that did you find that it gave you a better empathy for the customer when you joined I don't want to say the other side, but when you joined, like when you got to the insurtech space, like for example, for me, I started out as an agent. So when I joined the insurtech side and we started selling to agencies and people were like, well, why don't they do this? Like, well, that's not it's not even on their mind. They don't care about what we're talking about whatsoever, unless it moves the needle in XYZ area. Did you find that to be similar? That helped you a ton as you were building campaigns and things like that?
Absolutely. And especially having been on the side that's working frequently and communicating frequently with brokers, because I worked with agents all day long, every day for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was really close with them. Like I genuinely miss several of them. And like I'm connected on social media with many of them because they were, my direct colleagues for so long. And I was in the trenches with them for so long that I feel like, of course, every line is different, every agency, every broker is different, but there's commonalities of challenges that we all face. And having had that exposure to their world has been really, really helpful. And also to the insureds, because like I was one who was, we had to rotate in and out of the phone unit, as we called it at the time.
Yeah.
So literally I was talking to angry insureds too, of like, why did my policy change? And trying to explain that we were using credit now in rating. And this is what happens when you file a claim. And so I was really directly communicating with both insureds and brokers on a regular basis. So that just helps me so much when I'm crafting positioning or crafting messaging, that I can get more easily into their mind. But I never take for granted that I know what they're thinking, because it's one thing to have an educated assumption, and then there's like part two of like validating it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's more, and it changes. It's changed so
completely.
much from when I was an agent to what the challenge, especially in this market, that they're dealing with now. 100%. So when you made the transition from large company to like earlier stage, even at EIS isn't a huge company. It's not. I wouldn't call it a small company by any means. But what was that change to EIS to Bold Penguin? How was that transition for you?
It was very strange, and I knew it would be, because at any large carrier, any, top 100 carrier, you've got so many layers and you have so much process and you have so much like robust project management, and it's a slower pace because of some of those things, intentionally so. And then it was very strange to, be working directly with the CEO, directly with the CMO or, the product leader, and being able to pivot so quickly, which was very uncomfortable at the beginning. Because it's like, wait, shouldn't 7 other people review this before it goes out? Don't we need to have 17 people in legal and compliance take a look at this? So getting used to that and getting comfortable enough to have that confidence to move quickly. And I was so fortunate to work under leadership that really empowered me and guided me through that. And I think it's something that I also really value, of having had both sides, both because I was able to bring some of that process and structure to some of the less structured organizations that I worked with and try to help build that. But also walking that line, you don't want to build in too much process where it's not needed and slow yourself down. Yeah. So finding that balance has been, a moving target throughout my career, but I really value having had both of those experiences, both large small and medium.
Yeah. What keeps you in that startup world now? I mean, obviously, interesting job, interesting company, things like that. But looking at it a little bit more broad, what was it about that you really loved?
Man, I'm a glutton for punishment. I love the stress and the chaos
Yeah.
of startup life. And I know my sister, who's in government, she asked me the other day, she's like, why do you make your life so hard? I'm like, why do you work at startups and do content and this and that? And I'm like, it's fun. I love it. I mean, there is something to be said for like the steady day in, day out, the 9 to 5 bank hours of like a larger organization, having a very niche down role. And I value that too. But I do find myself so energized by like the faster paced and the intensity of people. I love working with founders. And I love working with like energized colleagues. Like I remember working on some of our launches, Callan, where like we'd be on a call. It was like me, you, and Mark, like having our like 9:30 a.m. calls and just brainstorming and just so excited. And that energy is hard to replicate in a larger organization. It's just a different vibe. So I really value that, and just seeing the impact of your work so quickly. There's like that like immediate gratification, where it's like you pull a lever and you see the result in like a week.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
So it's just so much fun.
Yeah, you like the feedback loop to see if something works is just almost instant. So that makes complete sense to me. And I hear you on the glutton for punishment because you have to be. You absolutely have to be. Okay. I want to dive into your role today, but I'm going to hold that for a minute. For people that are new to this format from the old format that we did, is one of the big things we want to do is we want to dive into an actual campaign. There's a campaign, strategies, whatever that might be. And Amber, we talked about one that I'm really excited to dive into. And that in particular was relaunching a product, which is not a small task. Where I'd love to start is what was what happened? What led up to this before you started doing the official relaunch? Why was it necessary to go through this?
Yeah. So to set the stage, I was leading product marketing, like at a niche liability carrier, joined the organization. And one of the first things that was flagged to me is, hey, we have this new policy that's about 3 years old, and it is not flying off the shelves, to be very frank. So what I also really appreciated was there's also an immediate appetite to really dig into it, because I feel like whenever you have a product or a new program or a new service that's not going well, I feel like sometimes we can treat the symptoms of like, okay, well, lower the price and make a new sell sheet. And sometimes that's part of it.
Right.
But I was really given the authority to dig into it. So looking at, okay, we're, 3 years in, it's not selling, we're at a fraction of where we want to be. So let's dig into this. So, and leading product marketing, I mean, this is like an ideal scenario of being able to do the end-to-end go to market in a way that is fresh and exciting for an existing product. So we started off with, I did internal voice of business research. Okay, let's talk to the teams. What do they think? What are they hearing? Distribution, underwriting, how did they feel the original launch was? I wasn't there for the original launch. So let's hear about that. What happened? What worked? What didn't work? And then let's talk about our external stakeholders. So let's really dive into this. So we did one-on-one interviews with like 15 brokers, 15 clients. I'm running this by them and really diving into like 45-minute recorded calls. So this was no small feat, as you can imagine. This is like
not at all.
3 to 4 month process just to do the interviews and then analyze the interviews. And what we really tried to do there was make it qualitative and quantitative. So little NPS scores along the way, so I could present and share specific metrics too, along with the voice of customer, voice of broker quotes. So someone that looked like, how likely are you to quote this product in the next 6 months? How likely are you to quote the product in the next 3 months? What if this. And what we found was, of course, price always comes up. I mean, you ask any broker or client about a product or policy in this case, price certainly comes up, but other things came up. The way that we had positioned the product was as, new, advanced, tons of value, listing out all the features. And what we found was we were trying to communicate the value, but we were communicating was complexity in the end. We made it appear very complex. And the newness was not seen as a positive by quite a few external stakeholders on both sides. I had a few clients were like, well, I don't want to be your guinea pig for a new policy. Like, you go test it out on someone else and come back to me when it's ready. So we were also inadvertently communicating that it wasn't tested, which it absolutely was. It was approved. It was not so far off from other things that we had done. So with all of that feedback and the voice of business feedback, we completely reworked the positioning and the messaging. We backed off of the newness. We backed off of the complexity. We backed off of the acronym we were using for it. And it's like, hey, this is protection for high verdicts. Let's call it verdict protection when we talk about it. Let's simplify it so that it's easier for brokers to sell. So it's easier for policyholders to buy. And then we really, of course, then invested in the messaging around that. And that messaging really varies depending on your audience. But for the broker set, it was a lot about making it easier to sell, making it easier to add into the conversation. And then for the policyholders, of course, it's getting very clearly to the value that it drives and being very clear about that. And then adjusting pricing, adjusting processes, and then setting goals. And I think that is one thing, too, that is really key on to align on is, what do you want to achieve, and aligning on that. How much do we need to sell of this policy for it to be a success? So that you are setting yourself up to know how it's going so you can iterate as needed. So we aligned on a goal and implemented new messaging, new positioning, and of course, new assets. You got to get your new PowerPoint slides, your new sell sheet. We made a teaser video, and we blew our goal out of the water. Within, I think we had like a 12-month goal, and we hit that in like 6 months. So it was just an incredible success. And one thing I think too is just incredibly collaborative. It can't be product marketing or just underwriting or just distribution, coming at it. It's got to be alignment on, this is what we're doing differently. This is how we're going to approach it. This is how we're going to measure it. And then the product marketing is kind of organizing, but has to be an acknowledgement that everyone is working together. So simplifying it, creating new assets, creating new messaging, and making sure that's customer driven, customer led.
Okay. I've got some areas that I want to zero in on here. I love it. What I'm hearing is this: you did the internal interviews, so it interviewed the internal team. You did the external interviews, and a good amount. I mean, what you just described was a good amount of 45 minutes to an hour long interviews. And from there, rebuilt the brand positioning, rebuilt the key messages, and made that for the agents, made that for partners, made that for everything, and then did a full relaunch and then built all the assets. So far, am I tracking?
Exactly. Yep.
So one of the things I often see is people will either do the internal interviews or they'll do the external interviews, but they don't necessarily do both. I'm curious, how different did the question set look, or was it a standard question set one? And if it was, how different did that look for the internal versus external interviews?
Oh, very different. And a lot of the previews and part of how we drafted the external question set was based on what we heard internally. So it was like phase 1, phase 2. And we also made sure that we talked to the small groups internally first and off the record, like, tell it like it is, hey, if marketing gave you a terrible sell sheet and this didn't work and that didn't work, like, tell it like it is. let's be super transparent, circle of trust here. And then with brokers, it was all about, okay, what didn't work for you when we launched it? Like what would incentivize you to sell it? What value do you see? And then with clients, it's all about assessing too, like, who is this for? Who would this appeal to? And that's a huge part of product positioning, is figuring out who specifically. And of course, you've got your ideal customer profile, and others outside of your ICP can certainly purchase, but you've got to focus in on that first too. So maybe this isn't a product for everyone. Maybe we need to tailor it in a little bit more. Maybe only large health systems would value this. And then we need to adjust our creative and our messaging accordingly. So it's kind of like a waterfall approach of using the internal feedback to craft external stakeholder feedback.
You brought up something interesting. Do you record the internal ones, or do you purposely not record them so people will be a little bit more open on what they say?
I really wanted to record them for my own sake, because I hate when I'm trying to
100%.
like,
Especially in an interview. On an interview, it's tough. Yeah, for sure.
But I also was really afraid that I was going to incentivize people to hold the party line, or not want to say negative things about the policy. So I intentionally made the group small and did not record for that reason, to make sure that it was as transparent as possible.
I love that. I think that's a small but key thing. And I'll be curious to see how much is that. Everything's recorded right now, and for good reason, right? It creates great data for AI to be able to work off of. But for these things, like, especially in earliest stage company, when I say early, like, let's just say less than 50 employees, they'll probably still do it. They really don't care. But once you start getting over 100, 200, and of course, the bigger up you get, the less somebody wants anything either recorded on email, whatever that may be. So I that makes total sense to me. Okay. When you get into those external interviews, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I'm personally like a huge believer in, like, just talk to your customers. So 99% of your problems are going to be solved by just doing that. It's a gross exaggeration. I'll probably get killed for that, but I'm okay with it. And you mentioned, how many interviews did you do total?
I think it was total, like, probably 33 to 35, including the voice of business ones.
Which is a lot. In B2B, that's a lot.
Yes.
What do you have a point? Do you set out to say we're going to do 30 of these, or do you go by the method more of we'll do 5, we'll do the first tranche. If we don't see very many similarities or commonalities in what we're hearing, we'll do the next tranche, and then the next tranche, or something totally different than that?
So in this case, I wanted to make sure I had all of the key segments represented. So I wanted us at least 2 to 3 small, medium, and large, at least 2 to 3 from all of our different geographies. I wanted folks that specialized in the specific liability insurance that we sold. I wanted folks that were generalists. And then on the client side as well, I wanted small, medium, large. I wanted all geographies, because I hypothesized that I would see significant differences, and state by state, based on legislation. There's going to be some states where this is a higher value than others. You've got states like Iowa who have set jury verdict limitations, where you don't necessarily need a product like this as much. So that was where I landed at. Okay, so like bare minimum, like 12 to 15, just to cover the basis of all the voices that I feel like we need to have. And we were incredibly fortunate to have an existing broker advisory council and client advisory council to leverage for that, and then, supplement as needed. Yeah.
Yep. That makes sense. Am I wrong in, it seems like one of the big pieces was that one of the big insights was that for the segmentation that was really writing this policy, the messaging and positioning was off. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think understanding what's important to your audience and what they're looking for. And what they were looking for was not the new and latest thing. What they were looking for was the tried, true, and tested thing that's easy to buy and easy to explain and feels familiar and trustworthy.
That makes total sense. What did the actual launch look like? Did you do a full launch like this would have been done 3 years ago to like put this out to market, or was it kind of a soft launch where you're going to everybody that like your key partners and saying, hey, here's the new product, here's what's different on a one-to-one or one-to-one or one-to-many basis? What did that look like?
Yeah, so how I like to look at launches in like 4 quadrants, on
Mhm.
like the bottom part, you've got like low hanging fruit. That's like maybe an inclusion in the newsletter. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got, multi-event strategy with, digital ad space and out of home and strong PR. And then you've got lots in the middle there. And for this, and this is where I think the goals are so important. And for us, we set a sales goal. Okay, well, what do we need? What needs to be true for that sales goal to be attainable? Do we need to have a press release? Do we need to be in every insurance media outlet? And the answer for that in this case was no. This is actually super niche. And what we need like at least 20% of our broker partners to be on board and excited about this product. And that's what we need. And that's a small-ish number in a niche world. So while the launch was very strategic and not light on the resources, because there was a lot that went into that, and building, we built an entirely new set of sales enablement tools, including several videos with production partners. But it was very much like right-sized for what we needed. And again, this is a hyper niche product. So I think that's also really important to line around that. Like, what does success look like? And then how do we get there? And the answer is not always big PR, multi-touch campaign. So in this case, we were able to really focus in on the specific audiences that needed to hear it, and get that message across with just new assets, and using our existing channels. So we didn't buy any billboards. We didn't do a press release. We didn't try to get broad media attention.
That's really interesting, because I mean, it's going to jump the ROI up significantly on
absolutely.
this. I think you mentioned the pricing changed a little bit. Did the product change very much?
No changes to the
Interesting.
product. It was just positioning and messaging. So we didn't have to refile anything. We didn't have to redo any of like the actual policy documents or anything like that.
Okay, dumb question. How gratifying was that?
Like completely to be able to see the results come through, and be able to celebrate as a team. Like, and this was something that was good for the insured, but also for us, also for underwriting. It was a way to shift limit structures, not to go too off the
No,
deep
no, no.
end of like insurance nerdery, but like this was a very positive shift for the industry also, because it put the coverage where it needed to go. Like, you don't typically have like a settlement that needs a $20 million limit. That just doesn't really happen. You need that for jury verdicts. So it just makes sense. And it's better for risk structure. It's better for the industry to have that set up. So it was just a win on so many levels, many levels. That was really, really exciting.
I mean, one of the things that just keeps firing in my mind is that, when you think of, oftentimes what happens on the marketing side is okay, how many leads are you generating, right? How much new business are we bringing in? And sometimes it's hard to like put a hard ROI on brand, on positioning, and things like that. And this to me this is an example of like a perfect example. That's why I was curious, like if the product changed dramatically, then it gives somebody else to say like, well, yeah, we changed the product. But this was purely positioning and branding and messaging. So that's why to me, it's like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is the case, correct?
Yeah, and that's where the goals are so important too, because when I tell you, like a lot of our leadership team was more excited about the limits that we shifted over to the niche kind of policy. So instead of having like, 10 million in excess, then you would have, take part of that and move it on to this like specific verdict protection piece. They were more excited about that. So I mean, we're excited about both, but like understanding what's important to your internal stakeholders as well. So you're sharing that message as well. Because I think as marketers, obviously, like I'm excited about like also some of like the open rates and how people are responding to it, and our NPS score is going up. But also like, okay, well, what's important to our like general counsel? Like what's important to our chief underwriting officer? So just thinking about like through that lens, so that everyone is seeing the success that it was.
When you had these conversations post, so once it was launched and you had this 20%, which I'm assuming that 20% was responsible for probably 80% of the business, like those key brokers, and you started having these conversations, very, very similar product, but with just a new messaging. Did they just get it right away? Did it just click for them when you went back and you had this conversation with them?
Yeah, they were really excited about it. Once we, even in the like initial research interviews, when I could see some of them who hadn't sold it before, and I loved that we had the relationship with them to have them be fully transparent. A couple of brokers would be like, I'm gonna be straight with you. I have never sold this. And I don't really want to. This looks really complicated. And like it would add another half an hour onto every new biz call that I would have.
Yeah.
So like, I love that transparency. Thank you so much. That's what we need. But once I would explain it, they would get excited about it. So it energized me of like, they see the value. We just have to talk about it a little bit differently. And not only did we change the pricing, but we like reposition the pricing, as like, it's less, X percentage less than standard excess or whatever, you know what I mean? So it was very clear what the value was. So that was really exciting to see too, and to see them get it. And then also, I think underwriting got really excited about it too. And we were talking about it. We were talking about it in our all hands meetings. I'd hop on the underwriting call. I was sending out weekly updates of where we were at, which kept the momentum going. Like, we're at 70% of goal now. No, now we're at 75. Oh, so-and-so just closed the XYZ account. Like keeping it fresh and top of mind.
I cannot tell you how many times I've gone through a customer interview process or prospects, like so people that they're not customers yet, but they fit what we believe to be the ideal customer profile. And this happens in startups a lot. And like, how many times do you just, by asking those questions to them and start to talk a little bit about what we're building, that they've wrapped that up by saying, oh, this is really interesting. I would love to, like, if you could build this, I'm super interested in this. I think that's such a great point. So you're now at Cowbell, and we talked about director of product and lifecycle marketing. So I've got a couple questions for you on this. What is it about product marketing that you love so much? And could you, for those that don't know, can you define, and a lot of people have different definitions, so I'm curious your definition. What is your definition of product marketing?
And that is one challenge of product marketing, is that it varies tremendously from organization to organization. And I think I've heard it put as simplistically as possible as like product builds the product, and then product marketing helps get it on the right shelf and get it off the shelf. So that's how and that is, obviously kind of very simplistic, but when I think of product marketing, it's sort of the business end of marketing, and it's the strategic end and the line between product marketing and marketing is so variable and fuzzy that it requires a lot of communication together, because if I think about like some examples from my own life, is like, okay, I'm drafting the positioning, I'm drafting the messaging, of course, checking with my SMEs, making sure I'm on track. And then sometimes I'm also drafting, I'm taking a pass at the messaging, what that looks like on a sell sheet. So maybe I'm partly drafting that. But then there's got to be a handoff to both the copywriter, the designer, and then what does that look like? And then do I take the messaging? Am I going to write the email? with the
Yeah.
messaging, or is there a content person that's going to write the email with the messaging? So that's where I think whether you're on marketing or the product marketing side, if you've got product marketing in your organization, that is such a critical point of communication that needs to occur on a regular basis. And if you don't have a product marketer and you're marketing, you're probably doing the product marketing.
Yeah.
And
So it's
and
usually
some-
the first role. I mean, so much of like the first hire is doing, whether that's head of marketing or whatever that might be,
Exactly.
is product marketing for sure.
Yeah, and the market research, the competitive intelligence, all of that feeds into it. And I think product marketing is a great slot in any organization to, if not own, co-lead, like client advisory boards, things like that, because that market research, and that client awareness, that market industry awareness is so key. But for me, like I mentioned, I came up sort of on the business side of insurance. I spent a lot of time digging through data, helping agents and talking about profitability and profitable growth. And I really enjoy that side of it too. But I'm also a very creative person. I love writing. I love working with images, and I don't pretend to be a graphic designer, but I enjoy playing in that space and collaborating in that space so much. So I feel like in product marketing, you kind of get the best of both worlds in that case. I'm still very, very active with the creative side of it, but I'm also got a foot in the business as well.
Do you think AI is going to greater? I don't want to make this an AI conversation per se, but from what you just said, do you think AI is going to almost kind of supercharge product marketers in a way because they actually can do some of the initial first drafts of the designs?
Oh, it's incredibly helpful as a tool. And I think AI will probably replace all human work at some point in the future.
Yeah,
Not in my lifetime, I don't think, but it seems likely to have an impact across the board. But certainly it's helpful because the research component used to take so much time.
Yeah.
Now, in this day and age, you also have to be extremely conscientious. I've had AI hallucinate several times and send me literal, like, legit looking facts and sources that it just made up. So in some ways it's more work. There was one project I was working on where I ended up just going back to Googling because it kept giving me like very legit looking sources. And I'm like, I'm spending more time validating these sources than I would if I just went to Google. So, I mean, obviously I continue to use it and leverage it daily, but always double checking it. I'm sure future iterations will continue to improve, I would imagine. But absolutely, because that research part, you can lose weeks/months doing research and also compiling stuff. I'm thinking of specifically the hours and hours and hours of footage I had of interviews. I did not have ChatGPT at the time. If I had, I could have just thrown that all in ChatGPT and have it spit out some, leading indicators. And I still love doing that for if I'm taking like stream of consciousness notes, for example, like, hey, make sense of this. So definitely expedites product marketing work and is an amazing tool.
Oh, I've done exactly what you just said to the T, taking all the transcripts from all of the customer interviews. And you hit on a thing I think that's super important and this is where people can get caught up in insurance, right? When you look at some of those sources outside of it that it's using, if you've been in insurance for a long time, you can look at that and it's like, oh, I know this is not a good source for to be able to use for this, but you can see if I think what I found is it helped validate things that I was already thinking.
Yep.
So when I have it produce, some of those initial, whether that's key messages, key insights, things like that, and then dive into some of those ones that were, counter to what I was thinking. And maybe it was right, but it gives you that opportunity to dive deeper. It makes a ton of sense. So as and then the other thing I want to dive into a little bit is lifecycle marketing. Mm-hmm. What is lifecycle marketing?
And one of the reasons I was so excited about my current role is because lifecycle was on there. Because that broadens the scope of what I'm working on. So my work doesn't stop once the product's launched. It goes all the way through the lifecycle. So I'm also focused on retention and nurture as well, which is a lot of the fun work too, and so critical, because it's one thing to get a new client or a new partner, but you also need to retain them. You also need to know how it's going. And I'm very passionate about onboarding. We've all had like negative onboarding experiences or lack thereof. So things like that, I think, are just so critical to product success, and can be overlooked. So or not connected or disconnected from other pieces. So I love that. That's, officially included where I'm at now.
Well, totally. I think lifecycle marketing is huge. I mean, I would actually probably say it's a luxury, right? Although it's becoming not so much a luxury at the earlier stages, because people are going to start to self-sign up more. And it hasn't happened as much. Like, what does that exactly what you just said? What does that onboarding experience look like? How are we staying in touch? How are we still continuing to build a relationship with our customers without having a person, contact them once a quarter or whatever that might be?
Yeah.
How do you think about that? How do you decide when to put different touch points in? And how do you decide what those look like?
And this is where that cycle of voice of business and voice of customer research is so helpful, because it also varies. And I think about, insurance or financial services and B2B, you don't always have that strong, direct relationship with the person that's paying the bill.
Yeah.
So it's nuanced. You can easily wear out your welcome. So how do you balance that? Acknowledging like the competitions for their attention in their inbox, and trying to build that loyalty to your specific brand and give them the information that they need to know. And what that has looked like for me in the past, for example, when I built out onboarding journeys, is that voice of business is asking, what questions are we getting from clients? When they're calling in the first 90 days, like, what are they asking? And then what are they complaining about if they're complaining about something in the first 90 days? And then what do you wish they knew? Is there behavior that we want to incentivize? For example, early reporting is often one. Like, don't wait until you get a jury, until you get a court summons to tell your insurance company that you might have a liability in question. So those are things that I think are really important for voice of business. And then asking clients too, like, what does that look like? What does that relationship with us, with our brand, look like? How did you feel this cadence was? What type of open rates too are you getting? Like, looking at the data side of it, like what are folks clicking on? When are they unsubscribing? So really watching that in real time as well.
Makes complete sense. Amber, last question I have for you is, if you can have a conversation with your younger self, age totally up to you, what would that conversation be, and what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think I would say, keep going. It all pays off, because I felt I had a quarter life crisis where I was in my early 20s, feeling like I was behind, that I didn't have the best degree. I wasn't keeping up with how I envisioned life to be, but I kept plugging away and I kept showing up. I'm just so happy with where I landed. I feel like when you're starting out your career, you sort of envision this linear straight line up, but that's not how it tends to go. You're going to have, it's very wiggly. And if you're lucky, it gradually trends up. But there's a lot of setbacks along the way. And comparison is the thief of all joy, right? So I think just keep plugging away, Amber, and you are going to be so happy where you land eventually, and you're going to find the right fit.
I love that. I comparison for me, it's been a constant struggle. I've gotten better with it, but it's so hard.
There's always someone doing better. Always.
100%, 100%. And then the thing, I think I just, you just realize, or you get, there's something else. If that's going that well, there's probably something else that's
100%.
not. But we never see it, so we don't ever care. So, Amber, this was so much fun. Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed Amber and I's conversation. I loved talking about positioning. I know it doesn't get all the headlines again, but I really enjoy it. If you want to learn more about Amber, you could find her on LinkedIn in the show notes. Also, if you like this episode, you could find me on LinkedIn to let me know. And if you really want to support the show, give us a follow on YouTube or give us a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I'll see you next week.